Warning! The following audio drama contains scenes of graphic depiction surrounding the medieval Black Death, which may disturb some listeners. Discretion is advised. Previously.
You're the devil!
I am no devil, but in knowing how you fear me, no matter how misplaced, I shall leave you.
Papa?
It has already been more than a week since the Chavoy boys passed, and 2 weeks since Dewari's wife, and we are fine.
But the bells ring more and more every day.
This miasma is causing great mortality.
Go home and die, Cumber World!
Mercy!
103 yesterday. Nearly 200 today. Stop ringing the bells.
Leo, what is the...
Mommy and Daddy, they won't wake up.
God is punishing us.
I might know someone who can ease your suffering.
Surrender Not the Flame. Episode 5. The Haunting Dead.
You didn't have to send him away like that.
Did your eyes see something different from the rest of ours?
No.
Now off your sorry knees and get back to what needs to be done.
I hear Mr. Dubris is not doing well. Haven't seen him outside for 3 days now. And Mrs. Morell looks a ghastly pale when she peeks out to toss the chick grain. You know they've closed the city gates, leaving us alone up here.
My eyes have never seen such sickness before.
And I said to stop talking about it. The air up here is clean, clear. Whatever is down in the city will not come up here to us.
Suddenly, Sanson leapt from the grass, face muddied, with stalks of weeds sticking out of his nostrils.
Stick that stuff out of your nose, you rat. Go away.
Sanson! Now look at you! This rain is not going to clear that off your face. Go get cleaned up. I wonder when Fina will get back. She's usually not this late when visiting the wheelhouse.
She didn't go to the wheelhouse. She's been heading out to the forest every day.
What?
As always, Elouan left his clothes and bag of belongings on the shore. He took a moment to feel each drop of rain kiss his bare flesh, then stepped into the raging waters of the river. The storm made the flow quicker and harsher, but he knew precisely where to plant his feet and focus his energy to make the trek safely to his now familiar meditation rock. He slipped only slightly when he climbed onto it from the wetness of the rain. However, he remained resolute to reach that inner space needed for clarity, and the boulder was the only guarantee of the needed privacy to achieve that objective. Or so he thought. Fina kept herself hidden behind trees and marveled at his physique as soon as he began undressing. At last, she had finally found where he had gone, and the reward of her pursuit gave her more than she could imagine. What a wonderful surprise when she got to see him the way God had made him. She thought he was like an angel as she watched the rain stream over his poised body. Indeed, it appeared he was in communion with the falling waters, as they formed rivulets over the contours of his muscles and down his spine, as if his flesh were made precisely for the particular flows in that singular moment. Giovanni rushed to saddle up a horse. Hero raced to reach his own steed, but Emiria held him back.
No, let Giovanni find her.
If she is with that devil,
then I will bring her home. He would never harm her. Or any of us.
Let him go. He will be all right.
Giovanni! Giovanni! Where's Elouan?
Maybe with my sister. This way.
The symphonic roar of the rain and rushing river masked Fina's approach as she carefully moved out from the trees. She stopped beside Elouan's clothes, paused, then tumbled her gown around her feet. At first, the cool air made her shiver, but she was already wet from the rain. Within moments, her exposed body acclimated to the rain's temperature. She closed her eyes and hoped to achieve some measure of union with the shower, as Elouan had. She wondered if the dousing would be adequate preparation for the coolness of the river ahead. Giovanni curved and entered the thick woods. Rachel followed, allowing only for the passing of an occasional tree between them.
If she did follow him, where do you think they have gone?
My sister knows these woods well. She would often go with my father when he hunted rabbits. But if I know Elouan, he would find the place that is most beautiful.
And where is that?
The falls.
Nature's opus of rain and rapids quickly moved Elouan into the inner space of contemplation. Time lost its hold, and the physical sensation of bombardment by the showers retreated from his awareness. Instead, his mind narrowed to search a different landscape not filtered by the physical senses. He homed into the feeling of his father's energy, recalling it from his memories. He had been attempting to do this for the last several days. He hoped that once he settled into the nature of Ranulph's frequency, he could cast it out across the countryside and feel it magnetize in a particular location where Ranulph might presently be. It was a bold step. Instead of asking the universe to guide him to the correct road, Elouan was attempting to ascertain the road on his own. He felt with the arrival of the pestilence, time in the physical world demanded innovation in locating the lost. It required one to take matters into his own hands. This, of course, necessitated intense concentration. Because of such mental absorption, Elouan remained oblivious that Fina had stripped bare and placed her first step into the raging river. The water was significantly colder than the rain, but Fina knew once she reached the boulder, Elouan's arms, as well as the rest of his body, would warm her in exactly the way she dreamed. The inspiration propelled the next step, then the next. The further she went, the more she became aware of just how powerful the current pushed against her. A foot slipped on the gravel of the riverbed, but she quickly regained balance. Halfway to Elouan, the current came harder, faster, and heavier. She stiffened her thighs to remain upright, but felt unable to muster the strength to bury her feet with stability. She glanced at the shore, wondering if she could make it back, but alas realized she had already come too far. She took the next step. The turbulence first shoved her to the left, then to the right. Fina raised her arms horizontally to maintain a sense of equilibrium while her feet searched frantically for a place to rest. Luckily, the river's current shoved her closer to the great boulder, but she also knew it could easily whisk her past the rock and over the falls. She clenched her legs again. The swiftness of the water twisted around her feet and swept them off the riverbed. She slipped and paddled to get closer. Her outstretched fingers scraped the rock's surface, then the current abducted her. Just as Fina flung forward toward the fall's edge, Elouan grasped her wrist and pulled her safely onto the boulder with him. She clung to him in terror.
Are you all right? Fina, you should not be here.
You do not know what
I know what you want, but I am not the right person.
Then who? Who could love with more tenderness, affection, passion?
Giovanni and Rachel parted the forest branches to reveal Fina and Elouan in a naked embrace on the boulder. Giovanni gawked, stunned, as Fina leaned into Elouan for a kiss.
What the?
Fina, no.
No! Fina, no!
Fina gasped and quickly huddled to cover herself. She hid behind Elouan, using him as a shield against Rachel and her brother. On the other hand, Elouan remained at ease, not at all concerned that everyone was witnessing him en naturel. Giovanni leapt from the stallion and rushed toward the riverbank.
What are you doing?
As you've seen me do all week, communing.
Rachel looked curiously at Giovanni as she dismounted, wondering if Elouan was right. Had Giovanni been spying on him all along?
Giovanni? Is that true?
Elouan stepped aside and took Fina's hand. Clearly, it didn't matter to him that Giovanni had watched him days before. He was more concerned for Fina's safety.
Please take her home.
Rachel gathered Fina's clothes as Elouan slipped into the river. He gently brought Fina into the waves, locked a warm arm about her, then guided her carefully across the rapids. The sight mystified Rachel and Giovanni. They couldn't fathom how he kept himself and Fina from being swept away in the powerful drag of the current.
Here. Here.
Why are you here?
There is trouble back at the town. So many are dying.
So many are finally learning the immeasurable worth of their connections instead of their separateness.
What were you doing? Fina!
So many are finally affirming their bonds. This is what disasters do. I'm not sure what you think I am capable of.
You know things. Can do things.
Would you perchance be a sorcerer?
He bewitched me.
No, I am no sorcerer. I am a guardian, a priest from a faraway place.
Not any kind of priest we know.
What are you guarding?
What every priest vows to protect, another soul with that of its creator.
What? My soul is damned now, for sure.
None of the usual faith, I imagine. Probably pagan. But if the good Duke didn't have cause to slay you...
A bit different from what you are used to, yes. But all faiths blossom from the same root. And like the branch of a tree, each leaf is its own valuable and unique expression. I come from a place you would call a mystery school. A temple quite far from here in the high mountains.
He gently brushed Fina's chin.
Listen to me. The great creative force that birthed this universe does not punish those searching for true enlightenment. Even if you feel that enlightenment is in the joining of the hips, which in most cases, it is not.
He kissed her forehead, then moved to his own clothes and started to dress.
And it's not God's wrath I should fear, but mother and father's.
Giovanni circled behind her and helped position Fina's wet clothes onto her thin frame.
Not really. These are dangerous woods. You were watching for his safety. as was I.
Elouan finished donning his garments, then wrapped up his herb pouches, put them in his sack, then hitched the bundle to his waist. The pack was smaller now, as he had earlier rid himself of what he no longer considered necessary. He smiled at Giovanni.
Bless you.
Elouan joined Rachel upon her horse.
Godspeed with you.
Keep your distance from others, both of you, to stay safe.
And what are you doing?
Rachel reprimanded him with a fierce look, then hustled the stallion away.
Do not look so sour. I hear the Pope himself takes a gander every now and then.
Giovanni climbed onto the stallion and offered a compassionate hand to his sister. She took it.
You still have all the fun. We'll take it slow.
The sky had turned orange and purple as the falling sun pierced the storm clouds. When they approached the field outside the wall of the cathedral, Elouan had Rachel guide the horse near the gate. Chills ran through him as he spied the massive trench, knowing what its use was intended for.
Are you sure this is most wise?
It is the one gate we can be sure they will open.
Elouan dropped off the stallion. As soon as his feet struck ground, a cold chill spiraled up his legs and wrapped about his temple, feeling caught in a spider's web. It was at once startling, but also expected. With so many dead, he knew the energies of the deceased would be near. He did his best to push the sensations aside as he nestled close to the wall and placed his hands on its stone surface. He leaned in, accepting that by touching the barrier, he could link into the whole of its length and maybe gain insight as to where and when the friars might arrive to open the gate. Instead, something else caught his attention. Curious. He looked down the wall off to the right, but didn't see anything unusual. He closed his eyes and refocused, and again was hit with a peculiar insight. Elouan kept his left hand on the wall as he marched its length off to his right, the touch keeping the vision clearly in his awareness.
Where are you going? Elouan!
Elouan ignored her as he turned a slight curve. He stopped as the mystery revealed itself. A series of ivy vines grown up and over the partition, painting the wall with its leaves and climbers. Excited, he rushed to the foliage and tugged several of the strands to test their strength. Satisfied, he glanced toward the top of a nearby parapet where it would be easy for a watchman to stake him with an arrow if caught climbing the greenery. Fortunately, no one was on duty, most likely because they had succumbed to the sickness.
We won't have to wait for them after all. Meet me at the gate.
With that, he clutched a handful of vines and pulled himself up the wall. Elouan and Rachel left the cathedral behind. With the arrival of sunset, the friars had stayed inside the abbey, giving the pair no resistance upon opening the gate. They trotted into the city streets. Rachel replaced the mask back onto her mouth and nose to ward off the thick odor of decay. Elouan felt the chilling cobweb sensation of disembodied minds tightening around his body. The constriction made his head throb.
Look out below!
Rachel politely shuffled the stallion to the far side of the lane as she tossed the contents. Elouan jumped off the horse, pulling Rachel with him.
Let him go! Let him go!
The dog zeroed in on them. Big, black, with buboes ringed around its neck and poking from an armpit. Clearly, the sickness had driven the canine to madness. His muzzle curled, revealing already bloody fangs, anxious to taste Elouan and Rachel's flesh. Elouan locked into its gaze to meet the dog's spirit. Rachel gaped as Elouan slowly sat on the ground.
What are you doing?
Elouan remained focused on the canine as he lowered his rear into the dirt and crossed his legs into meditation position. However fraught the animal's energy may be, he didn't want to disconnect from it, so he tunneled his awareness to harness only himself and the soul of the dog and blocked out the rest of the environment. Rachel cautiously fled into the covered stairwell of an apartment building. She could tell Elouan was up to something, but didn't have a clue as to what, and would it even work? Elouan's consciousness merged with the canine's. The energetic nexus blossomed to an optimal blend, or at least it felt that way. Like the wolf pack, he hoped to communicate through the linkage and inspire the dog to rush off. To bring that message home, he had to move the energy in a specific way, and the best course was to raise his hand, just as he had done before. The beast slid across the pavement as Elouan kicked it off. The Alpine Guardian swiftly got back on his feet, both arms striped from claws and teeth. Within a flash, the hound was at him again. Elouan pressed the canine at its throat to evade the lashing teeth, while its paws flailed wildly. A massive burst of adrenaline, Elouan hurled the animal away. The dog slammed into the cobblestones and rolled end over end. Elouan took a deep breath, then sat again.
What are you doing?
Elouan ignored her as he summoned the well of peace to envelop him. He knew if he could expand his consciousness beyond the boundaries of time, he could better handle the canine's speed, like how he rescued Fina at the waterfall. What's more, in his expanded state, he could potentially tune in to the correct field of magnetism that would link to the animal's normal state of being, making communication more likely. At least, he hoped. The dog twisted from its crash landing until it could find the right position to plant its feet and stand. It turned to see Elouan again, then drooped its head and bared its bloody teeth. All its muscles tightened. Its stiffened tail swung pensively back and forth, and its ears twisted forward. Elouan met the beast with open arms and wrestled it to the ground. He held the animal's muzzle closed while forcing the dog's brow to his forehead.
The light embraces you. The light saves you. You are free. Free.
The canine fell into an abrupt seizure. The trembling lasted mere moments. The dog suddenly turned still and cold. Elouan embraced the lifeless canine in a crushing grip, his eyes closed in heartbroken grief.
What the...
Drained, Elouan sluggishly rose to find stunned witnesses circling him. A terrified man slinked backward several steps. A lady who had watched from a ground floor apartment quickly turned in and slammed the door. Others hid in the shadows of stairwells. However, those who watched from above felt their elevation gave them security.
Witch!
Demon!
Elouan bolted. He rushed by a stairwell where the bystanders jumped up the flight to avoid him. Then he sprinted down an alley. Rachel raced after, convinced more than ever that he contained a power capable of saving Marie, or heck, maybe even resurrecting Sarah and Clarice from the dead.
This way. Follow me.
Elouan allowed her to lead him through several more blocks, then up the stairwell of Sarah's tenement. They stopped where Uda's body still laid crumpled. Though he had held Merovek's body and was altogether familiar with death, the sight of a corpse still had the tendency to shock Elouan. He tried to let it go as he hurried into the apartment behind Rachel. Elouan halted as if slamming into a wall. All his senses seized, and his blood curdled. Marie's body lay draped where Rachel had left her. She exhibited no signs of life, just a still resignation. Elouan knelt to the ruined mother and listened for her breath.
She still lives. Friends?
Can you save her? Can you bring them back?
No.
Rachel? Is that you?
Yes. I have brought a friend.
Where is the welt?
Rachel lifted Marie's dress to expose the buboes on her thigh. They were as large as eggs. Elouan noted a lesion had formed over one carbuncle's summit, splitting the flesh and oozing a sickly dark goo. He quickly retrieved an herb pouch, dipped his fingers deep into the bag, then sprinkled the fine powder over the hideous abrasion.
Can you save her?
I can only offer inspiration. If it is her path, she will travel it.
He opened another pouch and took a pinch of herbs, then lightly scattered them on Marie's lips. Satisfied, he dabbed some onto his own wounds, still afire from the attack of the hellhound.
When you return home, burn your clothes and wash every part of your skin.
How will that help if it's the air? Cleaning the skin will open the pores and it will get in.
This is not miasma. This is not something carried on the wind, but could be smaller than the eyes can see, jumping from person to person on their clothes.
What about you?
I will find new apparel.
Elouan paused as a force smashed into his mind. He crumpled slightly, then took a deep breath, trying to still himself against the unexpected intrusion. It felt as if the tightening cobwebs had finally broken through the barrier of his flesh and took root inside his brain.
I have to go.
Where? What are you seeing? Why has this plague come to us?
Elouan nearly tripped on a couple of the stairs as he bounded down to the street. He hadn't seen anything, as Rachel thought. It was all about what he was hearing. Piercing whine became layer upon layer of calamitous voices.
Where am I?
What is this place?
Lies.
Can't believe this.
Why didn't they tell us about this? You must let my family know.
Journey toward the white sun you see ahead of you.
The surface of his skin burned, as if pricked by 1,000 tiny needles, while his inner organs vibrated and boiled. Elouan panicked. He knew the nerve structure of his body could not handle such a high dose of stimulation. He fought to find a way of disrupting the onslaught. Right now, his body and mind were at a certain pitch that created an auric frequency capable for disembodied minds to blend and link into him. And with so many disembodied from the plague, this link would be quite irresistible. Spirits often saw people who had the talent to hear them as bright lights, or a type of consciousness window back into the physical world, and no doubt they saw that with Elouan. Elouan sensed his consciousness drowning. He couldn't project a thought, much less summon enough strength to engage his vocal cords. Instead, he grasped haphazardly inside his own consciousness for anything that might act as a lifeline. A feeling, a picture, anything that might break the sympathetic vibrations that allowed the deceased to blend. He saw the harbor. Elouan hobbled down the alleys and streets as fast as his feet could carry him, while simultaneously struggling to survive the crush of the voices and the burning of his insides. A few passers-by, courageous for being outside, dashed away, wondering if he was in delirium from the plague. He hit the wall of a building to stay upright and attempted to slow the inner eruptions.
I cannot help you. Go into the white sun. Your answers are there.
I must see my family. Tell them I'm still alive.
Where are my last rites? I must have my last rites. Answer me.
I'm lost. This can't be heaven.
I'm going to be judged and sent to hell.
Elouan clambered onto the pier. He was unsure of how long it took to reach the harbor, but relieved to have made it. He struggled to ignore the voices so he could carry out the next portion of the rescue. It was getting tougher, his body close to collapsing. He toppled into a small rowboat, then cleaved to the hull and untied its moorage. With oar in hand, he shoved off from the pier. The boat cut a course through a floating cemetery of plague corpses.
Leave me alone.
Squinting from the pain, he paddled hard to break through the bodies floating on the waves. Fortunately, the clamor of the voices blocked the macabre song of corpses hitting the canoe as he worked to break free. Once clear, he hustled to create distance between himself and the shore. Of course, distance didn't matter to the spirits of the dead, he knew. It was more about where in the open water the sources of the plague might not be swimming. Indeed, if they could swim at all, or better yet, be drowned. When he thought he had gone far enough, Elouan climbed to his feet, then raised his arms high. If anything was going to break the sympathetic bond of spirits to his mind, the sudden immersion into the coolness of the sea would do it. It would upset all of the physical body's sense frequencies, thus also the ability to harmonize with anything outside its normal range. There was also a grave risk. He could very well black out and drown. Nevertheless, he fell backward into the shocking coldness of the sea.
Not even the clergy have been spared.
Judging by the empty rows all throughout the cathedral, the epidemic kept away a half or more of the usual members. How many were dead and how many were staying home, no one knew. But it was evident from the shortage of monks in the choir, the missing deacons and other church officials, that even those considered most holy still succumbed to the onslaught of the sickness.
Where is your connection to God if even his faithful servants are also dying?
There is not one of us that is without sin here, and we know this. Therefore, we shall conduct weekly processions, carrying our relics out to the city center and back here to our holy sanctuary, treading barefoot along the cemeteries, begging our Lord for his divine mercy, attending stations every Friday in each parish throughout this county. As word has come, the pestilence has now crossed into Avignon, Paris, and will soon be in the streets of Calais. Pray the rosary thrice daily, for as I've said, we are wicked sinners, and God is taking us by way of this great mortality.
Many parishioners fell to their knees, hands clasped in prayers of desperation.
O Christ Jesus, we commit ourselves before you even more greatly in repentance, as even in this dark hour you guarantee us eternal life.
The bishop intended his prayers to extend beyond the cathedral itself, to touch the bodies of the dead, discarded in the massive trench outside the barrier wall. The mass grave accepted corpses by the hundreds, piled on top of each other, with loose dirt tossed between the layers.
For all of you before me, worry not for individual services of your loved ones. The Pope has given full rights for everyone who might be stricken, so long as you confess your earthly sins at the time of death. You may confess upon your neighbor, a stranger, or, because times are so graven, even a woman, if she be willing.
Rachel and Humphrey, like many parishioners, knelt from a lone pew a good distance from others to stay safe. Rachel clenched her jaw and sucked back her own tears, not because hearing another's confession was a burden, but rather it spoke to the severity of the disaster.
With no one yet to replace the town's mayor, and so many members of the city council already gone, the gate is being reopened for those who wish to retreat to a more rural land, where the threat of this contagion in the air may be lessened. O God, Christ Jesus, please forgive us as we cleanse ourselves of our beastly sins.
The exodus began even before the gate was raised. Families lined up, some closed tightly in horse-drawn carriages, while others walked with whatever they could carry. On the whole, they were a gaunt bunch, too worn to weep. When the passage cleared, departure was fairly civil. Those in carriages resisted pushing into a swift gallop, though they were sure not to make it a leisurely pace either. A few on foot did choose to run, while others thought it more prudent to tread carefully, lest they get too near someone who might unwittingly be carrying the disease. Of course, not everyone had a place to go outside the city walls. No country villa, small vacation home, or even extended family, so were forced to stay in the poisoned town. The vast majority of those departing, however, were the wealthy, which naturally made many remaining townsfolk jealous. It felt like the rich were rubbing everyone's faces in shit.
Look out below!
The party splintered to avoid the expected splash of the chamber pot from the second-story window. Instead, a dead body fell head over heels to the cobblestone street. The passers-by scattered more in surprise than terror.
Putrid!
Rich cowards!
Not all who had the means to escape took the opportunity. Duke Arale remained at his stately home, where earlier the pestilence had announced its entry with colossal fury. Many of his servants had perished since the party, as well as several tenants renting apartments and acquaintances throughout the city. He hoped to assist all he could by staying behind, to the point of risking his own health if necessary. He washed the feet of his servants, raised their wages, wept alongside them when they mourned their losses. He gave more to the church, not just in money, but also in food and necessities. In many ways, the plague was far greater than any conventional battle he had ever fought. Unfortunately, his efforts failed to protect those he loved most. Beatrix's symptoms came on a day and a half earlier, hitting with a violent fever and a rash of buboes over her thighs and armpits. Many husbands would have abandoned their spouses with such proliferation of the disease, but the Duke persisted, steadfast. He had taken a vow to love her in both sickness and in health, and his heart could not bear to break the oath. He fed her sips of water from a flask, wiped her forehead with a damp cloth, and rolled down the bed covers to keep her cool from the ravages of the fever. Indeed, he resolved to stay with her to the end. Jehan reacted quite differently. He, too, saw servants fall ill and die. The way the disease turned the body grotesque with hideous boils, rashes, and blackening limbs, he just couldn't stomach. The threat of such ugliness, accompanied by the pain, kept him locked away in a separate wing of the villa. He refused entry from any laborer. He worried intensely about Rachel and dared not imagine her beauty ruined by such a scourge. Yes, he wanted to hear how she was doing, but alas, he wasn't going to risk his own life to do it. The only way he kept abreast of any news was by a male servant he paid to stand outside on the patio grounds below his upper window and shout it to him. Even then, Jehan refused to appear at the pane and acknowledge the herald in case the disease could somehow be transmitted by merely looking at the fellow. It was through this arrangement he learned of the gate opening for people to flee. The opportunity was like finding a passageway out of a burning house, especially since he heard the news of his dear mother taking ill. He quickly gathered his finest clothes, assortment of jewelry, and tossed them into a satchel, then raced from the safety of his parlor to convince his father to join him. He knew the Duke would be with Beatrix, but Jehan refused to enter his mother's chamber, instead staying in the corridor beyond the door when he arrived.
Father, come with me to our manor out in the countryside where you will be safe. You cannot stay here. We can bring some of our closest friends, dine, drink, and not speak about any of this. It will be like it never happened.
Like it never happened. I refuse to leave your mother.
Father, servants are dictating to us their wages now, outrageously, if they are not running. Even if we keep only a few, they will bankrupt us. Those who take the bodies for burial, they're going to cost 5 times more tomorrow than they do today. They are the lowest of peasantry, taking advantage of everyone in this crisis. She is going to die. I beg you. A noble crusader should not pass like this.
Do not speak to me of death when you haven't even lived. You think life is getting your prick wet with whatever lassie you sat eyes on. You don't care about their piety. You don't care about their well-being. Go. Take all of the women you can grab hold of now before it's too late.
The blow infuriated Jehan. What good was life if it was to always be about sorrow and pain? Life was to be enjoyed as God provided opportunities for glorious pleasures. Alas, it was here, at this nexus of pestilence and potential freedom, that his own beliefs glared in stark contrast with his father's. And at this moment, he needed to make the ultimate choice. So he stormed out. The Duke let him go, knowing his son was bent on saving himself over everyone else. The best he could do was give faith to the Lord that whatever lessons be learned, Jehan would be cultured by them. By such faith, he put Jehan out of his mind and kept attention on his wife. He brushed Beatrix's temples. She quaked while weeping, having overheard the argument.
I promise, I will never leave you.
He leaned over her, then pressed his lips to hers, proving his undying love in face of the plague. Rachel could no longer bury her fear. If Elouan saw something that worried him enough to abandon her, and Bishop Jehan said that people could now confess their sins to a woman, it seemed that any chance of hope had vanished in the face of the apocalypse. If she and Humphrey could make haste to the countryside, perhaps there would be a slight chance for survival, given the cleaner air and wider spaces between people. She hurriedly stuffed small bunches of clothes into a rucksack to prepare for the departure.
It has been a few years since I've seen my uncle, your younger brother. You know he would take us in and care for us during this time of most incredible need.
Humphrey looked down at his cot, refusing to put a single pair of pants in his own sack.
Are your hands idle, Papa? You always used to be in such a rush to see him.
We cannot go.
Why? What do you mean?
Humphrey sat on the bed, then stabbed a finger inside a worn hole in his leggings near the upper right thigh. He tore the fabric to reveal a dreaded bubo bursting on his leg near the groin. When he looked at her, Rachel saw the feverish sweat beading his forehead. Rachel choked back tears.
Seems I may be seeing your mother sooner than I thought.
Who is there?
It's me.
Jehan.
Thank the Lord you look well. I've missed you so. My father is refusing to leave my mother. Come, while the caravan is still moving. I can bring you and your father with me. We can go to the manor house in the countryside and be safe from this God-forsaken pestilence. I can protect you, keep you safe from all of this, give you a taste of a life
Jehan, as much as you have given me and shown me, your kindness and most gregarious passion, more than anyone of my class deserves. And as much as I would be honored to be with you.
Rachel quickly retreated, allowing a tear to cascade down her cheek.
You don't want to touch me.
Are you sure you have it? Could you not still be well? I don't want to leave you here. I could still take you with me and look after you. He can stay behind with the others and join my father at the manor, because my mother has it too. He will most surely be welcomed for the time he has left. I am perfectly healthy. We are our parents' legacy. We owe them our survival.
I can't.
Rachel.
My place is here with my father. Please go.
Then you will die with him.
Jehan briskly marched to his enclosed carriage and climbed inside.
Make haste!
Rachel closed the door, fell, and quaked with sobs. Her world, indeed, had collapsed around her. Whereas Rachel cried at the destruction, Marie could only look on with a hollowed stare as the bodies of her family rolled into the newly dug plague pit behind the cathedral. Clarice's rotted corpse landed haphazardly alongside the body of her father, Uda. There were already several layers of bodies beneath her, each layer separated by only a shallow inch of dirt. The putrid smell of the dead stung the nostrils, even when covering the nose with a scented cloth. Marie wasn't the only person here. A handful of others hauled the departed upon their shoulders and dropped them into the trench. A few were clearly family members disposing of their loved ones because they were too poor to pay the corpse carriers, while others were the lowly haulers willing to risk contracting the disease themselves for the amount of money to be made. By now, the regularity of death was so common few tears were shed, Marie included.
Why did I survive, and they did not?
Her strength had returned 2 days earlier. The bubo shrank to half their size, with the ghoulish color all but vanished. But it was the decaying smell of the bodies that hastened her drive to dispose of them on her own. She procured an abandoned wheel cart near one of the closed shops, then dragged each corpse from the apartment and down the stairs. The cart was incredibly small, which is probably why nobody else had stolen it to discard bodies, but she managed to stack her daughters and husband onto the cramped bed. Their legs and arms hung over the edge, scraping the ground as she wheeled them through the streets. During the journey, she became acutely aware of the magnitude of the catastrophe. So many people had either died or fled, bodies laid carelessly along sidewalks and streets. Even pigs, dogs, and cats. It seemed the end of the world had arrived and already wiped out over half the city. She pondered how many of her friends had perished. Marie's sight fell again to the corpses of her family in the pit. Their silence, the sheer absence of their presence removed from the bodies. It all haunted her. She quickly threw handfuls of dirt on their faces, committing them to eternity. Meanwhile, Elouan's body had washed ashore onto an island. Next time.
There are so many dead around him. He cannot block out their voices.
Focus upon the flame, Elouan. Let it cast out the darkness surrounding you.
How does this end?
Bring out your dead! Bring them out!
You will find yourself floating above your body. You'll notice a silver thread connected to your belly. It will break.
Mother! Why have you sent me here? Where is my father? I wish to leave this place.
You cannot leave, as there are still things yet to be done.
To all Jeremiah and his kin, a town for each of them.
We're not even dead, yet you come in here and steal our things?
You will just be get along with him in the next few days.
Then I'll probably be the one carrying out your bodies.